You wake up every morning in the same house you bought more than 60 years ago. Your breakfast still costs less than $5, and yet your name appears among the richest people on the planet. That's the reality of Warren Buffett, a man who understood that wealth doesn't start in your bank account, but in your mind. While others chase quick profits, he perfected the art of waiting for the right moment, of cultivating habits that seemed insignificant but, over time, became an empire. It doesn't matter how much you have today. Buffett believes that financial freedom is a seed that anyone can plant, and that it flourishes with the right actions repeated every day. Maybe you'll hear something in this message that awakens something in you. If so, tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt that you were meant for something bigger than your current situation? Today, I'll take you through 10 principles that can transform the way you think, spend, and grow. Principles that, if you apply them with discipline, could change your life in just 6 months. Lesson 1. Spend as if you always earn less. For most people, the price of something is measured in dollars. For Warren Buffett, the real price is measured in hours of life. If you earn $10 an hour and buy a $1,200 phone, that device doesn't cost $1,200. It costs 120 hours of your work. 120 hours that you could spend learning a new skill, starting a project, or multiplying your capital. And yet, you decide to trade them for a device that, in 2 years, will lose more than 50% of its value. Buffett isn't saying you should live in extreme austerity. He's saying you should question every expense with a single question. Does this bring me closer to or further away from my financial freedom? This simple habit changes the way you view money. When you start to see it as time, your perception of what it's really worth changes radically. A financed luxury car can represent 2 or 3 years of net work. An exotic vacation on credit can cost you 6 months of real savings. The statistics are compelling. According to the U.S. Federal Reserve, 40% of Americans could not cover an unexpected expense of $400 without going into debt. This is not just a problem of income, but of financial habits. And here's the irony. Buffett, with a fortune of over $100 billion, lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500 and still eats at McDonald's. His philosophy is clear. Spend less than you can afford and put the difference to work on something that will generate value for you in the future. Lesson 2. Sleeping money loses value. Imagine you have $1,000 stashed under your mattress or in a non-interest-bearing account. Within a year, without touching a penny, that money will be worth less. If annual inflation is 6%, your real purchasing power is no longer $1,000. It's $940. You've lost $60 without buying anything. Buffett sums it up this way. Money that doesn't work for you works against you. This means that saving cash is like leaving water in a bucket with a small hole. It doesn't matter that you don't use it, little by little it leaks out. To avoid this, Buffett recommends that even small amounts start generating returns. You don't need millions to start. He himself started with $114 at age 11. Some simple options: savings accounts that exceed inflation, certificates of deposit, long-term index funds, which historically have generated between 7 to 10% annually, far exceeding inflation. But the real key is not just investing, but learning how to invest. Buffett spends 5 to 6 hours a day reading about markets, reports, and trends. For him, that's his form of training. Because without knowledge, investing is gambling. With knowledge, it's building. If you feel ready to put your money to work for you, write in the comments, "Nothing stops me. Everything drives me forward." Lesson 3. Think outside your desk. Big decisions aren't always made in fancy offices or under marble lamps. Warren Buffett knows this well. Some of his most profitable deals weren't signed in skyscrapers, but in places as ordinary as a McDonald's table, over a cup of coffee that cost less than $2. The environment isn't the star of the show, you are. Changing your location, breaking out of your physical and mental routine, can unlock a level of creativity that withers away in daily repetition. Markets are not driven solely by calculations, but also by ideas, and ideas need fresh air to grow. Albert Einstein is another living example of this truth. In 1905, he published 4 articles that changed physics forever, including his theory of relativity, and he did so from a modest patent office in Switzerland, not from a state-of-the-art laboratory. His advantage was not in external resources, but in his internal perspective. In finance, thinking differently is a brutal competitive advantage. If you look at the market with the same eyes as everyone else, you will react the same as everyone else, and you will get the same as everyone else. Buffett deliberately avoids this. He reads old reports, examines forgotten companies, analyzes data that the market no longer observes. He looks for angles invisible to the crowd, because that is where the highest profit margin is hidden. The lesson is simple but powerful. Change your location, change your focus, and look where no one else is looking. In finance, the unusual is often the valuable. Lesson 4. Invest in yourself first. For Buffett, the best investment in the world is not listed on the stock exchange. It is not in Silicon Valley or on Wall Street. It is in the mirror. It is you. Your skills, knowledge, and financial judgment are the only assets that never depreciate. A crisis can wipe out an entire fortune, but it cannot wipe out your ability to rebuild it. Buffett explains it this way: if I lost all my money today, but retained what I know, I could rebuild it in no time. And the data supports his view. A Stanford University study concluded that 85% of financial success is due to soft skills: communication, negotiation, leadership, emotional management, and only 15% to technical knowledge. This means that your salary, your business opportunities, and your ability to generate income depend much more on how you think, decide, and relate to others than on what you simply know in theory. The most costly mistake made by those with low or unstable incomes is to wait for the right moment to invest in their development. That perfect moment does not exist. Every year you postpone your training is a year less of compound interest applied to your own value as a professional. If you double your skills, you multiply your market value, and in the long run, that can be worth millions. If you believe that your greatest asset is yourself, write in the comments, "I accept success and happiness in my life." Lesson 5. Control what goes out before looking for more income. Financial freedom is not built solely on what you earn, but on what you manage to retain. Warren Buffett warns that living in debt is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much money goes in, it always leaks out. One of the biggest and quietest holes is credit card interest. In the United States, the average rate is around 20% per year. This means that if you have a debt of $5,000 and only pay the minimum monthly payment, you could end up paying more than $8,000 in interest alone over the years. No average investment, not even the S&P 500 with its historic 7% to 10% annual return, can compete with such a large loss. So, before you obsess over increasing your income, plug the leaks that are draining your capital. Cancel subscriptions you don't use. Sell what you don't need and convert those dormant assets into liquidity to invest. Reduce impulsive spending that gives you immediate pleasure but compromises your future. This is not about depriving yourself, but about freeing up resources. Every dollar you don't spend unnecessarily is a soldier you can put to work in your financial army, multiplying your investment capacity. Think of your money as a dam. No matter how much rain falls, if there are leaks, you will never accumulate enough to generate energy. Lesson 6. Never lose money, and never forget this rule. Buffett has 2 simple rules that seem too obvious to be so powerful. 1. Never lose money. 2. Never forget rule number 1. But behind this simplicity lies a golden principle. Don't risk what you need for something you only want. Many novice investors fall into the trap of speculative investments that promise quick returns. Most are bets disguised as opportunities. Buffett, on the other hand, chooses slow but safe investments where capital is protected and risk is calculated. Part of this strategy includes maintaining liquidity, having enough cash to take advantage of opportunities or weather crises without selling your assets at a loss. During the 2008 crisis, while many companies were sinking due to lack of cash, Buffett used his reserves to buy solid companies at historically low prices. When the market recovered, those purchases generated billions of profits. That is the essence of his method. Protect your base before expanding it. Sleep peacefully because you know that no emergency will force you to sell what you value most. If you want to live with that financial security and serenity, write in the comments, "I am prosperous and I attract wealth." Lesson 7. Think in decades, not days. In a world where everyone wants quick results, patience becomes a competitive advantage. Buffett illustrates this with a memorable phrase: "You can't have a baby in a month by getting 9 women pregnant." Lasting wealth takes time to mature, just like a tree that doesn't bear fruit in the first year, but with constant care can feed you for decades. Most people plan their finances looking only at the next week, the next month, or at most the next year. Buffett, on the other hand, visualizes the impact of his decisions 10, 20, or 30 years down the road. That's how he turned an initial investment of $100 into tens of millions, by letting compound interest do the work. If you invest $500 a month with an average annual return of 8%, in 30 years, you won't have $180,000. You'll have more than $750,000. That's not magic, it's the mathematics of patience. Plan not for next Friday, but for the you who will be living 2 decades from now. That you will thank you for not giving in to the temptation to sell too soon or spend impulsively. Lesson 8. Own less to have more. Buffett understands something that many millionaires learn too late. Accumulating wealth is not always progress. Everything you own, an extra car, a second home, an expensive collection, requires maintenance, attention, and, above all, time. And time is the most expensive resource there is. Research by the Journal of Consumer Research found that people with more possessions tend to feel less free because they have to invest energy in taking care of them. What at first seems like a symbol of success can become an invisible chain. Buffett, despite his fortune, still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Why? Because he understands that his freedom does not lie in having more, but in not being possessed by his possessions. A private plane can save you hours of flying time, but 6 mansions can rob you of peace with their constant maintenance. True wealth is having control over your time and energy, not just an inventory of luxuries. If you are determined to choose quality of life over empty accumulation, say, "Nothing stops me, everything propels me forward." Lesson 9. Be brave at the key moment. In 1951, Warren Buffett was only 20 years old and had an ambition that surpassed any fear. He traveled by train from New York to Washington to try to meet Benjamin Graham, the legendary investor who would change his view of money. He had no appointment, no guarantee of being received, but he knew that such an opportunity could not be missed. That bold move did not generate immediate profits, but it did sow the seeds of a relationship that became one of the most valuable lessons of his life. And here's the lesson: fear is costly. Every opportunity we pass up for fear of failure is like leaving fertile land unplanted. You not only lose that year's harvest, but all those to come. Financial history is full of cases where a single bold move changed fortunes. On the stock market, for example, investing $10,000 in Coca-Cola in 1988, when many doubted its future, would be worth more than $320,000 today, not counting accumulated dividends. Boldness is not jumping without thinking. It is measuring the risk, calculating the cost of not acting, and taking the plunge when the moment is unrepeatable. Lesson 10. Make difficult decisions before time makes them for you. In 1985, Buffett closed Berkshire Hathaway's textile factories. The company had been born in that sector, but competition and changes in the industry were making it increasingly unprofitable. Many in his position would have kept the business out of attachment or for image reasons, but he understood something essential. Every dollar trapped in a dying project is a dollar that cannot flourish elsewhere. He freed up that capital and moved it to companies with greater potential. The result? He exponentially multiplied Berkshire's value and transformed its course forever. This lesson applies not only to businesses, it applies to our personal finances. If you hold on to investments that barely cover inflation or projects that consume time and energy without return, you are postponing the growth you could have. Time does not negotiate. The decisions you don't make, it makes for you, and usually not in your favor. Buffett has one key habit. Every night, he reviews his day and adjusts his plan for the next one. This prevents problems from piling up until they become unmanageable. Small issues resolved in time don't grow until they become uncontrollable. If you are determined to take control of your life and your financial decisions before it's too late, write in the comments, "I accept success, money, and happiness in my life." These 10 lessons are not theory. They are the real map that has guided one of the richest men in the world, and they can guide you. It's not about being Warren Buffett. It's about being the version of yourself that doesn't waste opportunities, that thinks long-term, that acts with intelligence and patience. If anything you heard today resonated with you, don't ignore it. It means your mind is already ready for the next step. Subscribe and join me on this journey. The next message could be the one that changes your life.